Hello viewers, Super GT here. I jumped onto Gran Turismo 7 this week and I found this. It was a really fun online race, Trial Mountain, in Group 3 cars. Now, this is a combination of track and car that I've been waiting for really since the release of the game. And it hasn't really come around until now. And it turned out to be pretty much some of the most fun I've had on this game. I know I keep saying that, but this one, it really was a good combination of car and track, and there's a couple of reasons why. As we go for a move up the inside of the Porsche into the tunnel, doesn't quite work out, but I would say the main reason that this has really given such good racing, for me at least, is primarily because of the rolling starts. You might have noticed that the cars are starting quite close to each other compared to before. We'll go into this in a bit more detail later in the video, but here we're going to have our first incident as we just pretty much follow the cars in front into the tunnel. You can see the Mustang in the background, meeting barrier at 90 degrees, never ideal. And as a result of that, we're going to lose a position down into 4th up against the Porsche. Now, if you watched the recent video about the Group 3 race around Laguna Seca, it's a fairly similar scenario where the Porsche just has really good traction. I mean, the BMW M6 doesn't quite have that traction, but it is a good car around this circuit. But we're going to try and do our best here as we rise the crest, just actually grazing the inside barrier. And this first lap has been a bit shaky, if I may say so myself, as we then head down the hill into the 90-degree left-hander, getting those left wheels into the yellow painted area. Just trying to secure my 4th position here, consolidate this position and not move any more positions backwards. That would be ideal. As we then head into the chicane, quite a crucial turn, as you have to get the good exit here. It's going to be quite hard up against the Porsche, which tends to have good gearing and slightly better traction. And we're going to pull away from the guys there in 5th. But as you can see, the pack is quite a lot closer, and that is a result, as I say, of the cars being closer at the start on the rolling start. And it just lends itself to so much better racing than before. And this is one of the pet peeves I had about Gran Turismo 7. The fact that the rolling starts were so spread out and you'd pretty much never have a race on lap 1. It would take a few laps for the cars, to catch up with each other. As I just bumped the guy in third there. Thankfully, no penalties, and we both continue, which is good. Still just trying to judge this view. I'm getting used to this bumper cam, and sometimes my judgments are slightly off. As we round out into the tunnel for the second time. Another important corner that, because Trial Mountain on this game, this version of Trial Mountain, is kind of stretched. These straights, this straight and the main straight, are both very long. We're fully into the slipstream here. I'm going to go to the inside looking for our brake marker, which is, there's this little yellow sign on the right hand side. Hug the inside line, up into 3rd gear on the exit, and we've pulled off the move against the Porsche there. Back into 3rd, back to where we started. But it's going to take a couple of corners here just to try and pull away from that Porsche so that we can really fully turn our attention to the car in front. Now, of course, with this viewpoint, we do get the benefit of the rear view mirror. And in that mirror, we see the guy in 4th there just drifting a little bit wide on that turn, which gives me a little bit of breathing space coming into the final chicane here. Though he's caught right back up immediately, it seems. Now, coming out of this turn, you see there the leader, you see he's ghosted out, and that would be serving a penalty. So the gap comes down to about 3.2, and that's going to really hurt you on the straights because they're so long. And the gap comes down to 1 second, so we're getting 2 seconds to get to the leader. There's contact between the top 2 there, and again, through the apexes of the first sweeping corners, very fast sweeping turns here to open out the lap at Trial Mountain. Through the tunnel, and we're pretty much right on this battle for the lead, and I'm going to go slightly defensive here to cover off from the Porsche behind, so I have to try and think about attacking and trying to gain the position, but at the same time I've got this car very close behind trying to overtake me, so it's quite a tricky scenario to be in. And again, the racing is a lot closer now, and it's much more fun, and I think Group 3 cars really do go very well around this track. It's a very fun combination, and it's one that I hope that they can kind of replicate. I hope there's more fun combinations coming up soon, And I would say that the closer rolling starts has helped massively, honestly. It's one of the things that annoyed me so much. A big lunge from the Porsche there, and he's going to go way too deep. I think I luckily enough turned slightly away from that and didn't meet the full force of that overtake as he slides wide, and we do the old switcheroo. Crofty going absolutely ballistic in the commentary box down the hill. Lap 3, more than halfway into this race, and it's hanging in the balance here. Still 1 second behind the McLaren in the lead, but you see there's a very close battle between the top 5. At this moment in time, it's pretty much anyone's game. It's through the chicane, end of lap number 3. Let's try and get that good exit. Up into gear 3. You see the BMW still squirming slightly on the exit as we cross the line then to begin lap 4 of 5. 2 to go as you speed towards turn number 1. This one requires bravery and a lot of timing to get that dead right, and you really do have to make the most of cutting the track essentially. And I don't know if you just spotted there, the leader has a penalty. I don't know if that was a 0.5, don't know if it was a 1 second, but I'm seeing a red banner above the car. Therefore at the end of this lap he's going to have to slow down once again. And that is the risk of this track. You really do want to push through those first couple of corners. There's so much time to be gained, but at the same time, don't push it too much such that you get a penalty. That really will cost you. So through the tunnel, I mean there's lots of tunnels here at this circuit, and onto the back straight. Am I close enough for the slipstream? I think I am. I'm not going to be able to pull off a move from this far back, but is the car behind me going to do it? They are fairly close. I'd like to think they're not going to send it in from that far back. But yes, sent it on the previous lap, so you've got to just monitor that risk from that car behind. He's not close enough. He's not going to go for that move. My main priority at the moment is really just keeping as close as I can to the leader, not even second place, really to the leader, so that when that penalty is served, we have a shot of trying to get that overtake. Down the hill, lap 4. This one is hanging in the balance. It's very close indeed. Bit of a squirm on the exit, but we get it under control down towards the final chicane for the 4th time, braking one of the shadow markers there. Not always the best idea in this game, given that there is dynamic time, but seems to work. Exit of the corner, you see the Porsche there, much better traction, just opens up that gap slightly, but let's see where the leader is. There he is, going to slow down, courtesy of the penalty, and we are going to go through up into second place with 1 lap to go. This is the final lap of the race, so let's see if we can put the pressure on and try to catch up with this lead and get a move done. I feel like lap 1 wasn't very quick. Actually, look at that penalty. We have a penalty for the leader. My first lap wasn't very quick, but eventually just growing into this race, and now we have a very solid chance of winning it with this penalty for the leader. So this one is going to be really tricky because I have this guy behind me who is quite adept at sending it from quite a distance. So I'm going to have to be really careful here about not losing this second place. I need to stay as close as I can to the leader whilst not losing second to the guy behind me. And this is the risky corner here because he sends it on lap 3. I have to make sure that doesn't happen again here. As we head down, I'm just monitoring the risk. He's in the mirror, you can see he's 0.2 or less than behind. And I decide, okay, I'm going to have to go defensive here, move the car to the left, do it nice and early, force him to the outside. There's actually contact between the McLaren and the Porsche. That's going to help me out big time, as I now have a gap to the pair of them as we rise the crest, braking at the top of the hill, and then missing the apex slightly, but back on the power. All I have to do is stay close to this guy, and then I pretty much have a win unless I do something really drastically stupid and get a penalty for myself. So as we come down into the final chicane, Porsche in the lead, they're going to go defensive. I'm not really thinking about a move here, to be honest. I'm just trying to stick as close as I can to him and just hoping the car behind is not close enough for a move. Thankfully they're not. This is where the penalty is going to be served. They serve it and boom, lose the speed. We're into the lead with a couple of 100 meters left to go in the race. We've timed it perfectly and boom, it's a race win. Absolutely incredible race. Really enjoyed it. So much fun from start to finish. And I wanted to try it out in America, starting from 15th, starting from last. And this is a really good example of the progression of the rolling start. So you can see here, the cars are a lot more compact, and normally tracks which end in a chicane are quite problematic, at least in the past they were. So you can see it's starting 15th, and we round out the final turn, and we get to start on the straight. So that is a big difference compared to before. On older races, well, we're going to take a look here in just a moment, because as we start the race, as we cross the line, I am 6.5 seconds away from the lead. So just remember that. We're going to jump to this race. This race was recorded back in May, earlier this year, and I'm starting in 30th. And you can see that I had to start behind this other car on the chicane, which never helps. You're always going to lose time as a result of that. And then we're going to pause it again as I go over the start line here. So at the same point, I am 11.2 seconds off the lead, and I started a few positions further ahead. And that is a massive difference. So I'm basically double the gap behind on the previous race, whereas this one, after the update to make the cars a lot closer on the rolling start, you don't have to start on the chicane for a start, which is always really annoying. And then 2, you're just closer. There's a much more battling, as you can see. It's pretty chaotic, as we're going to get crowded wide here by a Viper. Not sure if they saw me on the left hand side there, but it's all good. We managed to get around the outside. But the racing just begins immediately, and it's so much better. I know it's chaotic at times. Yes, that's very true, and I think sometimes you could argue that having a bit of a spread means that you can ease into the race a bit better. But I think ultimately, you want to be racing, and it's so much more engaging and fun when the car's just a little bit closer together. And I think the gap is a lot better now. Is it perfect? Not sure. We've got to test it at pretty much every track, but it's definitely a massive improvement. As we got up the inside of the Z4 there, a bit of contact, but I think it's okay. But yeah, it is a massive step in the correct direction. We're going to look for this move on the Genesis here. It's going to cover off, go to the inside, try to take an alternative line coming through the sweeping chicane here. Up the hill, we're going to get a triple overtake, 1, 2, and then 3. There's a car spun out on the left-hand side. So that's 3 overtakes in pretty much 2 seconds. So that's a good couple of corners there. Bit of contact from the Genesis, but we're going to keep the position and keep the car going and facing the correct direction, which always helps. So these corners need to be good here, just to make sure that I can pull a decent sized gap coming onto this back straight and not give them a chance of an overtake, and that's exactly what happens there, pulling out the gap. Lap number 3, going a little bit wide here, but then there's a car spun out in the tunnel, and we're going to go up into P7 with P5 actually very close in front, and this is where we can go for P6, obviously the best position in the world, P6. So trying to get a good exit here onto the back straight, into the slipstream, very long straight as we've mentioned, and therefore you have plenty of time to spend in the slipstream and get the overspeed, get the inside. You didn't actually really want to defend that one, which is fair enough. Looking for the brake marker board, the yellow sign on the right. That's a good way to get yourself into this turn and not overdriving the car there as we come through the corner and gain the position. Up against the Lamborghini, good to see another car being used here as we head down towards the final chicane. Now, this was kind of a half-hearted move. I didn't really fully commit to it. I braked where I normally would, and to be fair, he gave the space, and then I gave him space here, aware that he's still on my right-hand side. I tried to do the old switcheroo. Didn't quite work. Didn't get on the power early enough in 3rd gear, but we're going to tuck into the slipstream. And unfortunately for this poor soul, this is where his race unravels. As you can kind of see it in the rearview mirror, I think he just commits at the wrong kind of speed and angle into this first corner on the outside, and boom, just the back end of that Lamborghini gets dropped, and he's going to meet Barrier, the mountain-dwelling Barrier that we all know and love, and ultimately come through to finish 5th in that race. Not bad from 15th, but it's so much easier to do that when the the rolling start is a lot closer. Now I want to do this challenge where I set myself the challenge of only having 1 lap to qualify. So you have to pretty much nail 1 lap. That's a pretty good opening sector, good couple of corners there. And I think it's quite a fun challenge of just taking everything you've learnt so far by driving the track and doing a couple of races, and just trying to with the pressure of only having one shot to get it right, trying to nail a qualifying lap. So it's a case of risk management. Do you really just push for the absolute perfect lap, or do you just kind of just hold back a little bit so you don't take too many risks and risk really messing up the lap? And I think this lap's been quite solid so far, albeit not the absolute quickest. I set a 149.7 on my main profile on the Scott Speed account here. Let's see what it's going to be. We've got a couple of corners left to go. Back up to third gear. The BMW here, not the absolute best car for the track, but fairly comfortable and it feels pretty good. I would say coming out the slower corners, it doesn't quite have the speed. You could come out of these slow turns in second and it might feel quicker, but you don't have as much traction. The back end wants to break loose. So sometimes you've got to try third, but then the car kind of bogs a bit. So that's kind of the problem you're having to deal with. But then running up to the line is going to be a 150.001. It's a shame I couldn't go 2 thousandths quicker, but there you go. But it didn't matter because that put me on pole position for this race. And of course, because the rolling starts are a lot closer, that means if you're at the front, you've got more defending to do quite quickly. Because often in the past, when you're starting on pole or towards the front, the gaps are just quite big and you don't really have to worry about defending or anything. But now you're in a race immediately, and I love it so much more than before. It is so much a better experience of racing online. And I'd be curious to see how this plays out at other tracks, but I think on the whole, it's a positive development. So a really good combination. Group 3, Trial Mountain, closer rolling starts, and yeah, it's just a good race. I hope that the races continue to be better, but knowing Polyphony, he's gonna sometimes they can go back to a very boring race next week, but we shall see. But this one at least was very enjoyable, and I'll try to play it a lot more. Here, coming up into this turn, you can take a look in the mirror because the guy in third takes a very big lunge, and there's contact between the two of them, and that's going to slow the pair of them down. And I was quite aware in this race that I was in the BMW. I could be vulnerable in certain places, especially coming out of the slow turns. So I just really had to make as much of a gap as early as I could. And the Porsche behind managed to stay within about a second, but I was just growing in comfort with this car and not overdriving it, which I think is crucial. Sometimes it's really easy to overdrive the car, try too hard, but I was just being really smooth, being patient mid-turn, just coasting the car through and then gently applying the power, and it tended to work. And on the last lap you see it getting really comfortable with those track limits, not getting a penalty throughout I think I did 4 races over the course of this video to try to get the footage, and not once did I actually get a penalty, which is pretty encouraging. And ultimately they're finishing the race in the lead a couple of laps later. Ultimately, yes, this was a really fun daily race. I think the game is slowly improving, and they are getting to the key points. The rolling starts is something that I've always hated, the distance at the start. But it's good that they've recognised that now and have been trying to fix it. Let's hope that they can kind of get onto some of the other problems as well, because there are quite a few. But of course I want to know your thoughts, and if you have not seen my Aston Martin experience with Nico Hülkenberg, it's on the screen right now. But thank you so much for watching. I shall catch you next time. Goodbye.